It's that time again, Q&A episode 3. Thank you all very much for the questions for this episode. As always, well, first off, if you're new here, my name's James. I run Kibble Watches. It's where we buy and sell watches. So I'm a watch dealer, and that's exactly what this series is all about, asking watch dealer questions. So you can ask about watches, about business, about life, whatever you want to know, ask it in the comment section below, and I'll answer it in a future episode. If you do not want your name stated, just say so, or if you want to keep it completely anonymous, you can email me info@kibblewatches.co.uk, and again, just state you do not want your details or name or anything mentioned. Some people want an abbreviation of just a letter. Whatever works for you guys. Ask your question and I'll answer it. And as always, the timestamps are in the description below, so you can see what questions have been asked and when that question is being answered, so you can skip straight to that if you're only here to see your question answered, or you've got a specific one you want to know the answer to. All that can be done, and that's the same with every episode, so be sure to check episode 1 and episode 2 out. Some really great questions, and there's some really great ones in this episode too. So question 1 is from B, who asks, what's your view on the best 3 GADA watches? For those of you who don't know, GADA is Go Anywhere, Do Anything watches. I'm going to give you 3 at 3 different price points. They're going to be incredibly cliche and things you've heard before, seen before, and the reason being, they are pretty much, in my opinion, the 3 best watches for those price points of that category. So you can wear them in a nicer capacity, you know, with nicer, more formal clothes. You can wear it out, I don't know, hiking and doing stuff, maybe even water activities to a degree. You know, they are the Go Anywhere, Do Anything watch by definition. For me, those 3 are the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical 38mm. Obviously, they do 1,000,001 different variations of this, so whichever one, I would personally go for the black. And that retails at £545, and obviously can be found cheaper pre-owned. Hint, hint, I don't think I have any at the moment, but I always try and get them in. So that's at that price point. For a bit more, I mean, there's obviously Oris's and Seikos. There's a million things, right? I'm sure everyone's got their own opinion. But for quite a bit more, you could get a Tudor Black Bay 58. Obviously, again, configurations galore. You can choose whichever one you want. Again, I'd go with the classic black. They retail for £3,550, but you can get them pre-owned somewhere like £2,350, £2,400, you know, with a bracelet. So almost, well, over £1,000 off retail pre-owned. Definitely worth doing. And then on the sort of higher end, again, not going crazy, but the Rolex Explorer 1, 36mm, 40mm, 39mm, whatever configuration, whatever year you like. Obviously, a Go Anywhere, Do Anything watch needs to be robust and reliable, so I'd recommend 2004 onwards, 2002 onwards, those kind of things, just to get, you know, all the best you can possibly get. And that retails for £6,400, and I believe the 36 is trading somewhere around retail pre-owned, to be honest with you, and can actually be picked up a little bit less than retail, because I know I've sold a couple recently under retail. May have just been good prices at the time. But yeah, they're my 3 Go Anywhere, Do Anything watches. Let me know down in the comments, what is your ultimate personal Go Anywhere, Do Anything watch? I would say the Arcan on my wrist is my personal favorite in my collection, because it is screw down crown, water resistant, titanium, GMT, like does everything. So for me and my personal collection, this is my version of those watches we've discussed, and again, it's affordable, so that's my question. 2 is from N Koenig 1. He says, I'd like to know about vintage bargains. What are some good options, and what are your favorites and why? So vintage bargains, I believe in the same comment he mentions a Wittnauer he bought, which I was lucky enough to see in person. Very nice vintage piece. So vintage bargains, there are many, and I'll be honest with you, vintage Longines, Tissot, Wittnauer, you know, there's so many great options out there. That all you've got to do is really look, you know, have a look online, have a look on our website. On kibblewatches.co.uk, you can filter by price to different price brackets, 0 to 500. Have a scroll through, I believe there's a couple of nice vintage watches in there. They can be had. eBay, whenever buying from eBay or auctions, just be aware you need to keep an eye out for, or mainly just, you know, accounting, possible service and other things. Whereas buying from someone like myself or other dealers, you're going to get a warranty, you know, make sure you check that. But some good options: Mido, Movado, Wittnauer, Longines, those are some great ones. For me personally, Mido and Movado are definitely where I'm putting more of my focus, and you can find some real gems from those brands from the 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way up to the 70s. I think there's some really great pieces. So again, it just depends on what you like. I'd say figure out what design you're looking for, what style you're looking for. Gold dress watches, or you're looking for steel sports watches from the 50s. So something a bit more rugged, maybe more watertight Francois Bourgeois cases, things like that. And then just start digging, see what you can find. You know, that's how I found some of my most favorite watches in my personal collection that are vintage. It's just been pure luck of looking at the right auction at the right time and finding myself a little bargain. So question 3 is from Justin Galore 123. He asked, could you shout out your recommended watchmakers, and do you use the chap over the road? So for any of you who've been to my office, it's on Clerkenwell Road, which is near Farringdon Station. But on this road, there are 2 watch shops. There's a little yellow watch shop and the red antique watch company. I know both of those guys personally. They're both called John, funny enough. The red shop, John actually does watchmaking himself, and the yellow shop, I believe he doesn't. I could be wrong on that. But again, I don't use the yellow watch shop because I'm pretty confident he uses other watchmakers, and I know those people myself, so I can just go straight to the source. But John downstairs, he gives me a hand with certain things every now and again, and does a couple of bits here and there, which is very, very useful. And as I say, we've been friends for a very long time, so I know both of them. They're good guys. Just be sure to check them out if you are looking for repairs. The red shop, Antique Watch Company, is no longer taking repairs in from the public unless it's existing customers or watches they have sold. The yellow shop, I believe, is still taking them in, but go check with them and obviously do your due diligence and check everything first. And that's something I want to make very clear from the start. Over the years, we have switched and swapped watchmakers. We use, I use at this time, 6 different watchmakers across the country, depending on what it is that needs doing. Might sound like a lot, but that's just the nature of the business, and there is not enough watchmakers for the work required. Just to put it in perspective, I have about 8 watches right now that are not with watchmakers because I do not have, or the watchmakers do not have any more space to take on more work at this moment. So I've got to wait to get something back from them to give them another piece. And that's a constant conveyor belt that's just getting bigger and bigger. The other reality is a couple of watchmakers that I used to use years ago, I don't use anymore due to certain problems or things that have happened that just make me lose trust. And the reality is it's a trust-based game, which is another reason why I'm quite hesitant to recommend watchmakers, because I could have 2 years of flawless experience, but they could get something wrong because it's a hand thing, right? They are hand stripping your watch and putting it back together. Things can go wrong, things can happen. If that happens to your watch and I've recommended them, I don't want you coming back to me and blaming me for something that's happened, obviously. So hopefully that makes sense. But in terms of who I would recommend, there's a lot of good guys that customers use that I haven't personally used. There's like AMJ Watches, TikTok Repairs, a couple of guys in Hatton Garden that I've heard good things about, but again, I've not personally used. But one person I do personally use for vintage watches primarily, and he's been very good. Does take a little while, but he's just a one-man team, and that's the nature of this side of the world now, is Stefan Stephenson. He runs the Vintage Watch Fever. I'll try and put details up on screen. Be sure to check him out and obviously ask him if you've got anything you need doing. His prices are reasonable, but as I say, it can take a little bit of time depending on what it is, and that's going to be the case anywhere now. And then obviously the brands themselves, but just be careful. The brands obviously, they take a while, they charge extra, and they're very difficult to get a message across. For example, if you don't want a case polished or you don't want a dial replaced or something like that, it can be very difficult because it's almost like Chinese whisperers. You're saying it to the sales rep who's then writing it down, it's then going on the online system, then it's going to the person in the middle who does the inspection, and then it just keeps going, as you can see. But again, keep in mind, mistakes can happen at all points. It's humans at the end of the day, so just keep that in mind. Question number 4 is from Steve. Number 1 annoyance with the watch world. I mean, where do we begin? No, it's not that bad. I mean, the first thing to say here is I'm very fortunate to be in this industry. It's a great industry. It's built completely on trust. I know most watch dealers in the country, and I'm very fortunate to have a great series of people and collectors who shop with me and trust me, which is just fantastic. So I'm very, very fortunate. I think that's worth stating straight away. In terms of number 1 annoyance with the watch world, I would say, just talking about watchmakers as we were, it's very hard to find reliable watchmakers, and it seems to be a dying trade, and I wish there was more people going into it. that weren't closing themselves off to just work with one company or one brand, or don't want to take trade work or whatever it might be. I get it, but we need more watchmakers. So hopefully we'll get more. What's another annoyance with the watch world? I would say, to some degree, things like forums, like they're a great place, and I built up a lot of my early reputation because of them. But they can be a bit of a toxic place as well. And this is the same for everything, right? Every industry has this aspect. But I think there's a lot of keyboard warriors and a lot of people in forums who unfortunately think they know everything without ever really handling many watches at all. And again, they hide behind personas and fake names and sort of spout a lot of stuff. Now, I've been quite fortunate. I haven't had that many attacks on forums or bad things said. This is where this sparks it now. There's going to be a flurry of them. But to be honest with you, it's one of those things I know from experience and other customers and other people in the trade. It can just be very detrimental through no real reason at all. And again, it has its place. There's places like Periscope, for example, amazing place and things we need, very transparent, pointing out what's wrong with the industry. There's some places where it's just bitching for bitching's sake, to be completely honest with you. And again, by people who are hiding behind a screen. You don't know who they are, what their experience is, why they apparently are the expert, know these things. And, whereas you've got someone like Periscope, he's very transparent, you know who he is, you know what his experience is, and he shows it here rather than just saying, this is what it is. It will fully demonstrate why that is what it is. Hopefully that makes sense, but they're probably my annoyances with you. Question number 5 is from someone anonymous who says, how much money do you need to make a living selling watches? Great question, something I am asked so often, and I can't give you a straight answer because it depends on so many factors. That's the reality. How much money do you need to make? What is your current living situation? Are you like me where you've got a wife and 2 children and a home? You obviously, well, in theory, you've got to make more unless you're one of those guys who's got a Lamborghini and eats out every night and lives that kind of lifestyle, which I certainly don't. I drive a Kia, so there we go. But how much money do you need to make? I mean, what I could do is run down the basic principles of costs and things like that. And then you can sort of work it out from there with what works for you. So the typical rule of thumb is we make anywhere between 8 and 12% margin on sales. So what that means is, for simple maths, we sell a watch for £1,000, we're going to make anywhere between £80 and £120 on that watch. Now, something I have to make very clear here, because as some of you watching will know who have sold me watches and I've sold them for X or whatever it might be, sometimes you can make a lot more. Sometimes you make a lot less. Sometimes you make a loss completely and you have to put stuff in auction and let it go. Things happen. So again, this is why it's a typical 8 to 12% is where it ends up being. I'm quite fortunate. It's more on the 12% year on year. So that's where I'm at. Again, just to be transparent. On that 12% is where all your costs are going to be coming out of. So you have your 12% margin, your £120. In the UK, if you sell enough watches, I believe it's £75,000 worth of sales, you have to be VAT registered. So Kibble Watches is VAT registered. I'm VAT registered. We work on something called margin scheme VAT. So VAT in the UK is 20%. Now, if I had to pay 20% VAT on the £4,000, that's £200. I'm going to be paying more VAT than I've earned on the watch. So I'll be out of business before I ever begin. So we work on something called margin scheme VAT, which is where we pay VAT on the margin we make. It's an extra step in the bookkeeping and things like that. So these are things you've got to keep in mind. But I pay 20% on that £100, let's say I made on the £1,000 sale, to keep it simple. 10%, I pay 20% on that 10%. So over £100, £20 straight away goes to VAT, it goes to the taxman. I'm left with £80 now. That £80 is then split over potentially shipping costs, because I do free shipping, photography, time, potential repairs, any watchmaking that's had to go into it, a new strap, all of these aspects then get put into it. So I think it's pretty safe to say after all of that, you might be looking at somewhere between 40 and £50 of money in your pocket, which again, there's other taxes down the road and other things you've also got to pay for, the office, the lighting, the internet, all this sort of stuff. So that is the sort of cost process that goes into it, and you can do the math on that rough idea to hopefully give you an idea of what you'd have to be making. But to put it into perspective, I have to be doing at least £1 million in sales a year, at least to make this work with all the costs associated, and for me to make a comfortable living for my family, and that we're not just, you know, making enough to get by. We have a little bit extra to be able to put some savings away, go on a holiday every now and again, which we've not done in a while, and other things as well. So hopefully that's as transparent as I can be, without giving you my exact numbers, which I don't particularly want to do, which I think is understandable. But from that, if you need to make, let's say you're a student or whatever, and you just want to make 20 grand a year in your pocket after everything, from that basis, you can hopefully work out how much in sales you've got to do. Question number 6 is from A, who asked 2 questions. His first question: would you consider selling jewellery or other items as well as watches? This is an interesting question, something I've been thinking about for many years, and something I have considered strongly. So right now, at this moment, no. The reason being, I do not have enough time to focus on more stuff other than watches, and even that has been narrowed down to just pre-owned watches. Anyone who's been following long enough will remember a time where I stocked brands like Fears, Squale, and I was working with other brands as well to get them in for stocking as an official retailer, which was fantastic. But again, it just narrowed my time so much that I couldn't focus as much on pre-owned, which is what I primarily do. And to be honest with you, it's what I enjoy more because of the variety and the sort of control. Whereas, you know, when you have a stockist, you've got that brand, you've got to work with that brand, you're on their deadlines with shipping orders coming out and payments and all that kind of stuff. It's nicer to work in pre-owned personally. So at this moment in time, and for the foreseeable future for sure, no, it's just going to be watches. However, I am not opposed to also selling jewelry and potentially other interesting items, clocks and pocket watches, which I know are still kind of like watch related, but maybe even like interesting antiques and stuff like that. I have a broad interest in all of these things, but again, not anytime soon. Maybe in 10, 15 years, it might be something I branch out into, or as our children go to school and my wife has more time, I know she has a keen interest in learning vintage jewellery and would very much like to start something up there. So that may be something we branch into Kibble watches, Kibble jewellery or something like that, I don't know. But yes, potentially there, but not in the immediate future. I'd love to know down in the comments, would you actually like to see something like that? Is that something you think would be interesting? You know, coming here to buy watches, but also being able to see some vintage jewelry, either for yourself, for your missus, whatever it might be. Or again, for the ladies out there, would you like to see vintage jewelry as well? Maybe we do some pairing options. There's so many routes you can do that are all fantastic, and I get given a lot of great ideas, but it's always remembering these things require a lot more time as well that I just don't have at the moment, but they could be worked out in the future, either via my wife or getting staff or dedicating some other time elsewhere, you know, offsetting the photography again like I used to with an employee or something like that. I don't know, maybe there's options. Let me know down in the comments. And his final question, which is the final question of the day: would you produce merch? Very quick and easy answer, no. I have a couple of Kibble watches jumpers and things like that, which I've even given away to a couple of people back when I had multiple. I wouldn't exactly consider that merch. It's when I had Danny working for me. A lot of you will remember him. He did the beautiful photos you see around here, which I will be upgrading at some point, just because they've been up for a while now. And again, all the photography on the website is now mine. And, you know, he had it on because he was working here, and it was a nice thing. My wife and my dad and things like that wear them. My daughter has even started putting some of the jumpers on that have shrunk in the wash. So no, I wouldn't produce merch. But again, maybe at some point I'll do some caps or something. I'll just give them out. But again, paid merch, it's not really my thing. It's not something I would particularly want to pursue. So there you have it. The questions today, 7 questions. Might be a bit of a shorter episode, but with maybe longer answers to the questions. I apologize for rambling so much. I certainly do that. You can speed it up, although I have been told I talk quite fast as it is, so maybe don't do that. But yeah, thank you all very much. As always, please leave your comments, your questions down in the comments for the next episode so I can build up some more for future episodes. Doesn't matter what it is, ask away, I'll answer it, even if it's just a short answer. And yeah, I look forward to hopefully seeing you again next Sunday with even more questions. Take care, bye-bye.